The billionaire CEO closed her account. She opened a trust with his last name and ironclad terms he couldn't break. Oliver James stared at the legal document, his face draining of color. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages bearing his family name. "What exactly am I looking at?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His attorney shifted uncomfortably. "It is the James Community Trust. And sir, you've already signed it." "Yes, but the terms were not this explicit. I never authorized this." Oliver slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. "Then break it. That's what I pay you for." The attorney cleared his throat. "I'm afraid we can't. The terms are ironclad. Once activated, it's irreversible." "Isabella sets me up," Oliver demanded, though deep down he already knew. Oliver closed his eyes, the memory washing over him. The day he'd closed her account. The cold satisfaction he'd felt watching her walk away with nothing. "She can't do this," he whispered. "She already has," his attorney replied. "And legally, there's nothing we can do to stop it." "Have you ever been dismissed by someone who thought you had no power? Ever been underestimated until the moment you stopped begging and started building?" He closed her bank account believing she'd run back for help. Instead, she transformed his cruelty into a power move that threatens everything he built. Stay with me until the end to see how she outplayed a billionaire at his own game, without breaking a single law. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? Your story might inspire our next episode. 5 years earlier, the financial district buzzed with the usual Monday morning energy. Isabella Brown walked briskly through the revolving doors of Meridian Financial, clutching her portfolio and a coffee. Her sensible heels clicked against the marble floor as she made her way to the elevator. The reflection in the polished doors showed a woman of quiet confidence. Intelligent eyes, practical suit, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. She was 32, brilliant with numbers, and completely unaware that today would change everything. "Morning, Isabella," called her colleague, Lucas. "Ready for the James pitch?" She nodded, taking a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be. Don't worry. Your analysis is solid. Even the great Oliver James will see that." Isabella had spent weeks preparing for this presentation. Meridian Financial wasn't a top-tier firm, but they had managed to secure a meeting with James Enterprises, one of the fastest-growing investment companies in the country. And Isabella's innovative risk assessment model was their secret weapon. The conference room fell silent when Oliver James entered. Tall, impeccably dressed, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in terms of profit and loss. At 38, he had already built an empire that rivaled firms with generations of history. "Let's not waste time," Oliver said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Show me why I should choose Meridian." Isabella's boss fumbled through the introduction, clearly intimidated. When it was her turn to present, Isabella stood, hands steady despite her racing heart. "Mr. James, your current investment strategy has a fundamental flaw," she began. The room froze. Her boss looked horrified. Oliver raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "Yes. You're overlooking ethical sustainability metrics that will impact long-term growth. I've developed a model that proves it." For the next 15 minutes, Isabella walked through her analysis, showing how companies with stronger ethical practices consistently outperformed their counterparts over time. Her voice grew stronger with each slide, her passion evident. When she finished, Oliver studied her for a long moment. "Everyone out," he said suddenly, "except Ms. Brown." Once they were alone, he leaned forward. "No one has ever criticized my strategy to my face." Isabella met his gaze. "I wasn't criticizing. I was offering an improvement." A slow smile spread across his face. "Have dinner with me tonight." "Excuse me?" "Dinner. To discuss your model further." "Mr. James." Oliver, I'm not sure that's appropriate." "It's just business," he said, though his eyes suggested otherwise. "Unless you're afraid your analysis won't hold up to scrutiny." Isabella straightened. 7 o'clock. Text me the restaurant. That dinner lasted until midnight. They argued, debated, challenged each other. Oliver had never met someone who stood their ground against him so firmly, yet with such clear reasoning. Isabella had never met someone who pushed her thinking to new heights. 3 more business dinners followed that month. Then came the night when business was barely mentioned at all. They talked about books, travel, dreams. Oliver spoke of building something meaningful. Isabella shared her desire to create financial systems that served people, not just profits. "You're different," he told her as they walked along the waterfront. "Most people either fear me or want something from me." "Maybe because you expect them to," she replied. He stopped walking. "And what do you expect from me?" "Honesty. Nothing more." When he kissed her that night, Isabella felt herself falling for more than his mind. She was falling for the man beneath the billionaire facade, the one with unexpected vulnerability in his eyes. Within 6 months, Isabella had left Meridian to start her own consulting practice, with James Enterprises as her first major client. Oliver's company began implementing her ethical investment strategies, and profits soared. Their professional relationship blossomed alongside their personal one. "We make each other better," Oliver told her one night as they lay tangled in the sheets of his penthouse. "You've changed how I see the world." Isabella believed him. She believed in them. She had no way of knowing that the very qualities that drew him to her independence, her brilliance, her unwavering principles, would eventually threaten everything he thought he wanted. Oliver James's corner office overlooked the city like a glass throne room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a god's-eye view of the world he was determined to conquer. The space was minimalist, expensive, and cold, much like the man himself had been before Isabella entered his life. "Your 9 o'clock is here, Mr. James," his assistant announced through the intercom. "Send him in," Oliver replied, not looking up from his screen. The visitor, a silver-haired venture capitalist, entered with the confident stride of old money. "Oliver, good to see you, son." Oliver stood, offering a firm handshake. "Harold, take a seat." As they discussed potential investments, Harold noticed a photograph on Oliver's otherwise impersonal desk. Oliver and a striking Afro-Asian woman, laughing on a yacht. "New acquisition?" Harold asked with a knowing smirk. Oliver's expression hardened. "Her name is Isabella, and she's not an acquisition." "Of course," Harold backpedaled. "Just unusual to see you attached." Blue eyes. The comment lingered in Oliver's mind long after the meeting ended. It was unusual. Oliver James didn't do attachment. His childhood had taught him the danger of depending on others. Born to a hedge fund manager father and a socialite mother, Oliver had grown up in material abundance and emotional poverty. His father measured love in achievements, his mother in appearances. When the market crashed in 2008, his father lost everything, including his will to live. His mother remarried within a year. Oliver, then 22, learned 2 lessons. Never trust the market and never trust people. He built James Enterprises on those principles, becoming ruthlessly self-sufficient. "You have trust issues," Isabella told him once, curled beside him on his sofa. "I have reality issues," he corrected. "People want things." "What do I want?" she challenged. He studied her. "That's what worries me. I haven't figured it out yet." Isabella laughed. "Maybe I just want you. The actual you, not your bank account." Oliver wanted to believe her. In many ways, he did. But old habits die hard. He kept a detailed file on everyone in his life, business associates, friends, lovers. Everyone except Isabella. He'd started one, then deleted it, ashamed of his suspicion. Yet the instinct remained. His executive team noticed the change in him. Oliver began considering the human cost of business decisions. He donated to causes Isabella cared about. He smiled more. "She's good for you?" his CFO remarked after a particularly successful quarter. Oliver nodded. "She makes me better." But beneath the surface, insecurities festered. When Isabella's consulting business began attracting high-profile clients beyond James Enterprises, Oliver felt an unfamiliar twinge. When other men sought her expertise, his jaw clenched. When she spoke of expanding her firm, he changed the subject. "Why not just join James?" he suggested one evening. "You could head our ethical investment division." Isabella looked surprised. "And give up my independence?" "My own vision. You'd have resources, influence, security." "I have those now," she said gently. "On my terms." Oliver nodded, but something cold and familiar settled in his chest. Control. He needed it like oxygen. That night, as Isabella slept beside him, Oliver opened his laptop and created a new folder. He titled it, Isabella Protection. Inside, he began planning what he believed would secure their future and his peace of mind. He didn't recognize it as the beginning of the end. The restaurant overlooked Central Park, its private dining room bathed in candlelight. Oliver had arranged everything perfectly: champagne, Isabella's favorite flowers, a small velvet box that wasn't quite what it appeared to be. Isabella arrived looking radiant in a simple black dress, her hair loose around her shoulders, the way Oliver preferred it. "What's the occasion?" she asked, kissing him before sitting down. "6 months since you told Meridian you were starting your own firm," he said, raising his glass. "To your success." They clinked glasses. "And to your support," she added. "I couldn't have landed those first clients without your connections." "You would have, just not as quickly." He reached across the table for her hand. "You're extraordinary, Isabella. You know that, right?" She smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Careful. Compliments like that might go to my head." "I have something for you," Oliver said, sliding the velvet box across the table. Isabella's eyes widened. "Oliver." "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "Open it." Inside was a platinum credit card with her name embossed on it, along with a folded document. "What is this?" she asked, confusion replacing anticipation. "Financial security," Oliver explained, his voice warm with what he believed was love. "I've set up an account for you. The card is linked to it." Isabella picked up the document, a bank statement showing an account with $250,000. "Oliver, I can't accept this." "Of course you can. It's just a safety net." She shook her head. "I don't need a safety net. My business is doing well." "For now," he said. "But markets change. Clients come and go. I just want to know you're taken care of." "I can take care of myself," she said, her voice cooling slightly. Oliver leaned forward, taking both her hands in his. "Isabella, please. This isn't about your capability. It's about my peace of mind. About us building a future together." "A future where you fund me?" she asked carefully. "A future where what's mine is yours," he corrected. "Isn't that what people in love do?" Isabella studied him, sensing something beneath his generosity but unable to name it. "Is it a joint account?" "In a manner of speaking," Oliver said. "It's under my primary account structure, but designated for your use. My financial team will manage the investments so it grows over time." What he didn't say, the account remained fully under his control. He could monitor every transaction. He could adjust limits. He could close it if necessary. "Think of it as the first step toward our shared life," he continued. "I'm not good at vulnerability, Isabella. This is me trying." Put that way, how could she refuse? Reluctantly, Isabella accepted the card. "Thank you," she said. "It's very generous." Oliver smiled, relief washing over him. "Use it however you want. No questions asked." Over the following months, Isabella rarely used the card. An occasional dinner with clients. A weekend trip they took together. New office furniture when she expanded her firm. Oliver checked the statements religiously. Each modest purchase reassured him. She wasn't after his money. She truly loved him. Until the day she made a substantial withdrawal, $50,000 transferred to an account he didn't recognize. "It's for my mother," Isabella explained when he casually inquired. "She needs hip surgery, and her insurance won't cover the specialist I want her to see." "You should have told me," Oliver said. I would have arranged everything. I did tell you, Isabella replied. I'm telling you now. After the fact. I didn't realize I needed permission, she said, her voice sharpening. You said no questions asked. Oliver backpedaled. Of course. I just want to be involved in your life. The incident passed, but something had shifted. Oliver began suggesting Isabella consult him before major financial decisions. For her protection, he claimed. For their future. What had begun as a gesture of love was revealing itself as something else entirely. The account wasn't freedom. It was a gilded leash. And Isabella was starting to feel the tug. The James Enterprises annual gala transformed the Museum of Modern Art into a showcase of wealth and influence. Under crystal chandeliers, the elite of the financial world mingled, each conversation potentially worth millions. Isabella stood near a sculpture, engaged in animated discussion with the CEO of a sustainable energy company. Her firm had recently helped them restructure their investment approach, resulting in significant growth. Your partner is brilliant, the CEO told Oliver when he joined them. We've had every major consultant pitch us, but Isabella's strategy was revolutionary. Oliver smiled tightly. She's exceptional. Later, as they moved through the crowd, Oliver's hand pressed possessively against Isabella's lower back. You're making quite an impression, he murmured. That's the idea, she replied. Networking is how I grow my business. Our table is waiting, he said, steering her away from a group of potential clients. At dinner, seated among Oliver's executive team, Isabella felt increasingly invisible. The conversation revolved around James Enterprises' latest acquisition, with Oliver at the center. Isabella, didn't you analyze that sector last year? Asked Oliver's CFO. Before she could answer, Oliver interjected. Isabella's focusing on smaller clients now. This deal was beyond her usual scope. She stared at him, stunned. Actually, Dessert, Oliver interrupted, signaling a waiter. In the car ride home, tension crackled between them. Why did you undermine me like that? Isabella finally asked. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. You made it sound like my work is insignificant. Oliver sighed. I was protecting you. That deal involved complexities you haven't encountered. I've worked with 3 companies in that exact sector, she said, her voice tight with anger. My analysis would have been valuable. Then why haven't you mentioned these clients before? I have. You don't listen when I talk about my work anymore. Oliver's jaw tightened. That's not true. When was the last time you asked me about my business instead of suggesting how I should run it? The question hung between them, unanswered. At home, Oliver poured himself a scotch while Isabella changed out of her gown. I got a call from Westridge Capital, she said, emerging in loungewear. They want to bring me on as their primary ESG consultant. Oliver looked up sharply. Westridge? They're our competitors. They're potential clients, she corrected. Big ones. It's a conflict of interest. No, it's not. I've never signed exclusivity with James. But you're with me, Oliver said, as if that settled everything. Isabella crossed her arms. My business is separate from our relationship. Is it? He set down his glass. Who introduced you to half your clients? Whose name opens doors for you? The words hit like a slap. Is that what you think? That my success comes from your connections? I think you're being naive about how the world works, Oliver said. And ungrateful. Ungrateful. Isabella's voice rose. I've never taken credit for your work. Why can't you acknowledge mine? I do acknowledge it, Oliver said, softening his tone. I'm proud of you. I just don't want to see you make mistakes. Taking on Westridge isn't a mistake. It's an opportunity. An opportunity that could compromise what we're building together. Isabella stared at him. And what exactly are we building, Oliver? Because lately it feels like I'm just an extension of your empire. That's not fair, he said, reaching for her. She stepped back. I'm going to bed. The argument wasn't resolved, merely postponed. Similar tensions surfaced with increasing frequency. Oliver began questioning Isabella's business decisions, suggesting improvements to her strategies, expressing concern about her growing client list. "You're stretching yourself too thin," he'd say. "Let me help." His help always came with invisible strings. One evening, Isabella discovered Oliver had spoken to a potential client behind her back. "I was just looking out for you," he explained when confronted. "Their financials are shaky." "That wasn't your call to make," she said, furious. "I have more experience." "Stop. Just stop." Isabella paced the living room. "This isn't about experience. It's about control." Oliver's expression hardened. "I've supported you from day one. Support isn't the same as control." "Fine," he said coldly. "Make your own mistakes." The next day, Isabella noticed a discrepancy in the account Oliver had set up for her. The balance had decreased significantly. "I moved some funds to a different investment vehicle," Oliver explained when she called. "For better returns." "Without telling me?" "It's still my primary account structure, Isabella. I'm managing it for our future." The word "our" hung heavily between them. That night, Isabella sat alone in her apartment, the one she'd kept despite spending most nights at Oliver's penthouse. She opened her laptop and reviewed her finances. How much of her life had become entangled with Oliver? The account, the clients, the future she'd begun to envision through his lens. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Dinner tonight? I miss you." She hesitated before replying. "Can't tonight. Early meeting tomorrow." It was the first time she'd chosen distance over reconciliation. Something was shifting inside her, a quiet reclamation of boundaries. Oliver sensed it too. His texts became more frequent. He sent expensive gifts. He suggested a vacation to reconnect. When Isabella landed the Westridge contract, despite his objections, Oliver's reaction was unexpected. "Let's celebrate," he said, no trace of his previous disapproval. "I've been thinking. It's time we made things more permanent." "What do you mean?" Isabella asked cautiously. "Move in officially. Give up your apartment. Let's stop pretending we're not building a life together." The offer should have thrilled her. Instead, alarm bells rang faintly in her mind. "I need time to think about it," she said. Oliver's smile tightened. "What's there to think about? You're here most nights anyway. It's a big step." "Bigger than sharing finances?" "We've already done that." "Have we?" Isabella asked quietly. "Or have I been using an account you control?" The question landed like a gauntlet between them. "Is that what this is about? Money?" Oliver's voice cooled. "After everything I've given you? This isn't about what you've given me," Isabella said, standing her ground. "It's about what you're trying to take." Pause for a moment. What would you do if someone used money to control you? Comment your thoughts. The morning started like any other. Isabella woke early, prepared for a client meeting, and checked her emails over coffee. Nothing suggested the day would alter the course of her life, until her card was declined at the coffee shop near her office. "I'm sorry, Ms. Brown. It's showing as invalid," the barista said apologetically. Isabella frowned, using another card instead. She called the bank immediately. "I'm sorry, Ms. Brown, but that account has been closed," the representative informed her. "Closed? There must be a mistake. There was over $200,000 in that account. The primary account holder closed it yesterday afternoon. The funds have been transferred back to the main account." Primary account holder, Oliver. Isabella ended the call, her hands shaking with a mixture of shock and rage. She dialed Oliver's number. "Good morning," he answered smoothly. "I was just thinking about you." "You closed the account," she said, her voice deadly calm. A pause. "We need to talk about this in person." "No, we need to talk about it now. You closed my account without warning." "Why?" Oliver's voice hardened. "It was never your account, Isabella. It was my account that you had access to, with my name on it, with 2 years of my life tied to it." "And who funded it?" he challenged. Who made it possible for you to build your precious independent business? The truth of his perspective hit her like a physical blow. This was how he saw their relationship, a transaction, an investment he controlled. I'm coming to the office, she said. We're going to fix this. Now. I have meetings all day. Cancel them. 30 minutes later, Isabella strode through the James Enterprises lobby, ignoring the receptionist's protests. She pushed open Oliver's office door to find him on a call, looking unsurprised by her entrance. I'll call you back, he told the caller, hanging up. You're making a scene. You stole my money, Isabella said, closing the door behind her. Oliver leaned back in his chair. I reclaimed my investment. There's a difference. $200,000, Oliver. Without warning. It was always my money, he said calmly. I've simply consolidated our finances until we sort out this phase you're going through. Phase? Isabella's voice rose. Is that what you call me wanting independence? A phase? I call it ingratitude, Oliver replied, standing. Everything you have, you built with my help. My connections. My resources. That's not true, isn't it? Westridge hired you because of your connection to me. Everyone knows it. Isabella felt as if she'd been slapped. Is that really what you think? That I'm nothing without you? I think you're confused about where your success comes from, Oliver said, his tone softening as he approached her. I'm not the enemy, Isabella. I'm trying to protect what we have. By stealing my money? By undermining my work? By reminding you what matters? He reached for her hand. This power struggle isn't us. We're better than this. Isabella pulled away. This isn't a power struggle. It's a wake-up call. Look, Oliver sighed. If you want to build a future with me, prove you're here for love, not money. That's all I'm asking. The words hung in the air between them, revealing everything. You think I'm with you for your money? Isabella asked, incredulous. I think money complicates things. I'm simplifying them. Isabella stared at him, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity. You're not simplifying anything. You're just showing me who you really are. And who is that? Oliver asked, his voice dangerously soft. A man so afraid of losing control that he'd rather destroy what he loves than risk being vulnerable. Oliver's expression hardened. I've given you everything. No, Isabella said quietly. You've loaned me things you could take back whenever I didn't behave as expected. There's a difference. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Transfer the money back, Oliver. Or what? He challenged. Isabella met his gaze steadily. Or accept that you've just lost something money can't buy. She walked out, her dignity intact but her heart shattered. As the elevator descended, her phone buzzed with a text from Oliver. When you're ready to be reasonable, we'll talk. Until then, perhaps this will help you remember what really matters. Attached was a bank notification. $10,000 transferred to her personal account. A fraction of what he'd taken. A symbolic gesture that said everything about how he valued her. Isabella deleted the message without responding. She had lost more than money today. She had lost the illusion that Oliver James had ever truly seen her as an equal. Isabella walks away. The rain fell in sheets as Isabella entered her apartment. The one Oliver had repeatedly suggested she give up. Now its modest space felt like a sanctuary. She kicked off her heels and sank onto the sofa, allowing herself, finally, to cry. Not for the money, for the betrayal. Her phone buzzed incessantly, Oliver, alternating between apologies and justifications. You're overreacting. We can work this out. I did this for us. Just call me, Isabella. She silenced the notifications and stared at the ceiling, mentally calculating the damage. $200,000 gone. But more importantly, her professional reputation potentially compromised. How many of her clients would stay if they knew about her connection to Oliver? How many had hired her for her expertise versus her association with James Enterprises? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a courier holding a large bouquet and a small package. Delivery for Isabella Brown. The flowers were her favorites, peonies and lilies. The package contained a velvet jewelry box. Inside was a diamond bracelet and a handwritten note. A peace offering. Let's not let pride come between us. Oh! Isabella stared at the bracelet, its diamonds catching the light. This was Oliver's solution. Replace what he'd taken with something she couldn't convert to independence. She placed the bracelet back in its box and set it aside. Then she opened her laptop and began to type. By morning, she had drafted 2 documents. A formal letter terminating any business relationship between her firm and James Enterprises, and a personal email to Oliver. The business letter was professional, detached, final. The personal email was shorter. Oliver, what you did wasn't about love or protection. It was about control. I won't be controlled, not even with diamonds. Don't contact me again. I'll return the bracelet when you return what you took from me, not just the money, but my trust. Isabella, she sent both messages, then began making calls. First to her assistant, instructing her to clear her schedule for the day. Then to her bank, securing her remaining accounts. Finally, to her most trusted clients, arranging meetings to discuss her firm's future direction, one completely separate from James Enterprises. By noon, Oliver had called 17 times. She didn't answer. By evening, he was at her door. Isabella, please, he called through the door. Just talk to me. She stood on the other side, silent. This is childish, he continued, his voice hardening. Open the door. More silence. Fine. Have it your way. But remember who helped build your client list. Remember who opened doors for you. His footsteps retreated down the hallway. Isabella leaned against the door, a strange calm settling over her. She had expected to feel fear of starting over, fear of Oliver's influence in their industry. Instead, she felt something unexpected, freedom. The next morning, she walked into her office with new purpose. Julie, she addressed her assistant, I need you to clear my calendar for the next 2 weeks. We're restructuring. Restructuring? Julie looked concerned. Is everything okay? It will be, Isabella assured her. We're going to rebuild this firm from the ground up. No connections to James Enterprises. No favors. Just our work, our expertise, our reputation. That's ambitious, Julie said carefully. It's necessary, Isabella replied. And I need absolute discretion. Especially about this. She handed Julie a list of names. These are the clients I believe came to us primarily through Oliver's influence. We're going to approach each one, offer them the opportunity to stay with us based solely on our performance, or part ways amicably. We could lose half our business, Julie warned. Then we'll replace it with clients who choose us for the right reasons. Over the following days, Isabella worked relentlessly. She refined her firm's focus, emphasizing areas where her expertise was unquestionable. She reached out to former colleagues who respected her work. She prepared for the financial hit that would inevitably come. Some clients did leave. Others, surprisingly, stayed. James might have made the introduction, one CEO told her. But your results are why we're still here. Each such affirmation strengthened her resolve. Oliver's attempts at contact became less frequent but more calculated. He sent legal letters questioning her right to retain certain clients. He spread subtle rumors about her firm's stability. He alternated between threats and peace offerings. Isabella responded to none of it. Instead, she poured herself into rebuilding. She sold her designer wardrobe, much of it gifts from Oliver, to create an emergency fund. She moved to a smaller office space. She took on speaking engagements to establish her independent voice in the industry. At night, alone in her apartment, she allowed herself to feel the loss, not of Oliver's money or influence, but of the future she had imagined with the man she thought he was. You'll get through this, her sister assured her during their weekly calls. You're stronger than he knows. Isabella nodded, though a question nagged at her. Was strength enough against a man with Oliver's resources and reach? The answer came to her one night as she reviewed trust structures for a client, a legal mechanism designed to protect assets and ensure they were used according to specific wishes, even against powerful interests. She stared at the document, an idea forming. A dangerous, brilliant idea. Oliver had taught her about power, about leverage, about using legal structures to maintain control. Perhaps it was time to use those lessons against him. The law library was quiet, its shelves filled with volumes on financial regulations, trust law, and corporate governance. Isabella had been there for hours, her table covered with open books and legal pads filled with notes. "We're closing in 15 minutes, Ms. Brown," the librarian informed her. Isabella nodded, not looking up from the text on irrevocable trust structures. She had discovered something fascinating, a legal loophole involving family names, inheritance structures, and charitable clauses. For 3 weeks, she had immersed herself in trust law, consulting discreetly with attorneys who specialized in the field. She asked hypothetical questions, pieced together information, and gradually formed a plan. "It would need to be ironclad," murmured Lucas Jeffries, a trust attorney she'd hired for a consultation about a client's situation. "How ironclad can it be?" Isabella asked. "With the right language and structure? Nearly impossible to break without the grantor's consent. And if the grantor is reluctant?" Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Then the terms would need to be crafted very carefully, and there would need to be significant incentive for the grantor to sign." Isabella nodded thoughtfully. "What about naming rights? How legally protected are family names when attached to trusts?" "Family names carry significant legal weight," Lucas explained, "especially when the family is prominent. There's both protection and obligation attached to them." This was the key Isabella had been searching for. The James name, Oliver's most prized possession, his family legacy, the brand he had built his identity around. Back in her apartment, Isabella created a detailed outline. The James Community Trust would be established with a modest initial funding from her own savings. Its stated purpose: to support ethical business education and community development in underserved areas, causes Oliver publicly claimed to support. The genius lay in the details. Once established, the trust would bear Oliver's family name permanently. Its terms would require regular contributions based on a percentage of James Enterprises' profits. Most importantly, it would include a public commitment clause. Once signed, any attempt to dissolve the trust would trigger a very public explanation of why Oliver James was abandoning his commitment to these causes. For a man whose empire was built on his reputation, such publicity would be devastating. But would he sign it? That was the question that kept Isabella awake at night. The answer came from an unexpected source, Oliver himself. In his efforts to discredit her, he had given an interview to a financial magazine, positioning himself as a champion of ethical business practices and community investment. James Enterprises isn't just about profit, he had claimed. It's about creating lasting positive impact. Isabella cut out the quote and pinned it to her wall. This was her leverage. Over the next month, she worked with a small team of attorneys, none who knew the full picture, each handling different aspects of the trust structure. She funded the initial trust with $50,000, nearly all her remaining savings. "Are you sure about this?" Julie asked when Isabella explained she was establishing a charitable trust. "Absolutely," Isabella replied with quiet determination. "It's time to create something meaningful." The final document was a masterpiece of legal craftsmanship. 37 pages of carefully worded clauses, conditions, and commitments. At its core was a simple premise. Oliver James would publicly commit to ethical business practices by establishing a trust in his family name. What wasn't simple were the consequences of signing or refusing to sign. Isabella reviewed the document one last time before sending it to be bound in a leather portfolio embossed with the James name. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the file on her computer. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. About creating something good from something broken. And if it happened to teach Oliver James a lesson about power, that was simply a bonus. Oliver James's morning routine was precise. Wake at 5:30 a.m. exercise for exactly 45 minutes, shower for 7 minutes, breakfast while reviewing overnight market movements, car service at 7:15 a.m. This particular Tuesday began no differently, until his assistant interrupted his breakfast. Mr. James, this just arrived by courier. Marked urgent and confidential. Oliver frowned at the leather portfolio bearing his family name. Who sent it? The courier didn't say, just that it required your immediate attention. Alone again, Oliver opened the portfolio. The first page bore a simple heading, The James Community Trust. His frown deepened as he flipped through the document, scanning its contents. A trust, using his family name. Committed to ethical business education and community development. His first thought, lawsuit. Someone was trying to pressure him, perhaps even blackmail him. Then he saw the funding amount, $50,000. A pittance for a man of his wealth. Hardly threatening. The document outlined a simple commitment. James Enterprises would contribute a small percentage of annual profits to the trust. In return, the James name would be associated with ethical business leadership. Oliver reached the signature page and froze. There, in the space for the trust's founder, was a name he knew all too well. Isabella Brown. His phone rang immediately. Get me Daniel Harrington, he barked to his assistant, referring to his head legal counsel. An hour later, Daniel sat across from Oliver in his office, reviewing the document. It appears legitimate, Daniel said cautiously. A standard charitable trust structure, though with some unusual clauses regarding naming rights and public commitment. It's harassment, Oliver insisted. She's using my family name without permission. Actually, Daniel cleared his throat. The document doesn't establish the trust yet. It's proposing you establish it. Your signature would make it official, which I obviously won't provide. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Before you decide, you should be aware of certain implications. What implications? The document includes a public disclosure clause. If you refuse to sign, Ms. Brown has the right to publicly explain why, including publishing correspondence regarding your financial interactions. Oliver's jaw tightened. She's threatening me. Not explicitly, Daniel cautioned. The language is carefully crafted. It simply creates a framework for transparency around your commitment to the ethical causes you've publicly endorsed. The causes I've what? Daniel slid a magazine across the desk. The same financial publication where Oliver had positioned himself as a champion of ethical business practices. His own words highlighted, James Enterprises isn't just about profit. It's about creating lasting positive impact. She's using my own statements against me. Oliver realized, a reluctant admiration mixing with his anger. There's more, Daniel continued. The initial funding is modest, but the trust is structured to accept public donations. If this becomes known, others could contribute, expanding its influence while still carrying your family name. Oliver stood, pacing the office. So my options are to sign this document committing my company to ongoing financial obligations, or refuse and risk public relations damage. Essentially, yes. What if I countersue? Claim harassment? Daniel shook his head. The document is carefully worded to avoid any legal definition of harassment or coercion. Ms. Brown is simply offering you an opportunity to formalize your stated commitments. Pursuing legal action would likely generate exactly the kind of publicity the document suggests would occur if you refuse to sign. Oliver slammed his fist on the desk. She can't do this. Legally, she can, Daniel replied. And from a PR perspective. He hesitated. What? From a PR perspective, establishing a community trust would actually enhance your public image. The financial commitment is minimal compared to your annual profits. Could be positioned as a win. Oliver stared out the window, his mind racing. Isabella had outmaneuvered him. If he refused, he'd appear hypocritical after his public statements. If he fought it, he'd generate negative publicity. If he signed it, what's the worst-case scenario if I sign? He asked finally. Daniel reviewed the document again. The financial commitment is fixed at 0.5% of annual profits. There are clauses regarding board composition. You'd have input but not control. And there's an irrevocability clause. Once established, the trust cannot be dissolved without unanimous board approval. So I'd be committing to this permanently. Essentially, yes. But again, the amounts are relatively small, and the PR benefits could be substantial. Oliver made his decision. Draw up a response. I'll sign, but I want it clear this is my initiative that she's merely facilitating. Position it as a generous act on my part. Daniel nodded. I'll have it ready this afternoon. After his lawyer left, Oliver sat alone, a grudging respect mingling with his fury. Isabella had used his own tactics against him. Leverage, public image, legal pressure. She'd learned well. Too well. He signed the document that afternoon, believing he was making a minor concession to protect his reputation. His PR team was already drafting press releases positioning the James Community Trust as his latest philanthropic initiative. 3 days later, Daniel Harrington requested an urgent meeting. We've reviewed the final trust documentation, he began, his expression grave. There are complications we didn't initially identify. Oliver felt a chill. What complications? The contribution structure. It's not a fixed 0.5% as we understood. It's a sliding scale that increases based on James Enterprises' public valuation. The more successful your company becomes, the more the trust receives. That wasn't in the original document, Oliver protested. It was, but in the technical language of the appendices. We missed it. How bad? At current valuation, approximately $3 million annually. If your company continues its growth trajectory, potentially much more. Oliver's face darkened. Dissolve it. Now. That's the second complication, Daniel continued, his voice strained. The irrevocability clause is extraordinarily robust. It's tied to your family name in perpetuity. Breaking it would require not just board approval, but court intervention. Then get court intervention. On what grounds? You signed willingly. There was no coercion. The trust's purposes align with your public statements. No judge would dissolve a charitable trust under these circumstances, especially one bearing your family name. Oliver stood, his voice dangerously quiet. Are you telling me I'm bound to this? Permanently? Daniel nodded slowly. I'm afraid so. Ms. Brown created a legally flawless structure. The trust is now a separate legal entity with your name attached to it. And sir, he hesitated. What else? Oliver demanded. The board composition. You have input but not control. Ms. Brown has positioned herself as the trust's executive director for the first 5 years. She'll be overseeing how the funds are used. The realization hit Oliver like a physical blow. Isabella hadn't just created a financial obligation. She'd created a permanent public connection between them, one where she held significant power. Sir, his lawyer said carefully, you just agreed to terms you cannot break. If you're still watching right now, you're a real one. Hit the like button so more people can find stories like this. The James Community Trust made headlines across financial media. The press release, crafted by Oliver's team, portrayed it as his visionary initiative to align corporate success with community empowerment. Photos showed Oliver at the signing ceremony, his signature smile firmly in place. What the press release didn't mention was that Isabella Brown, listed simply as executive director, had orchestrated the entire structure. Or that Oliver had discovered too late the full implications of what he'd signed. The first board meeting took place in a sleek conference room downtown. Oliver arrived early, determined to establish dominance. When Isabella entered, their eyes met briefly, hers calm, his cold. Ms. Brown, he acknowledged formally. Mr. James, she replied with equal formality. Thank you for your generosity in establishing this trust. Others filed in: community leaders, financial experts, educators, all selected according to the trust document specifications. Oliver had managed to place only 2 of his own people on the 12-person board. Let's begin, Isabella said once everyone was seated. As you know, the James Community Trust has been established to support ethical business education and community development in underserved areas. She outlined the Trust's initial projects, scholarships for low-income students, community business incubators, ethics training programs. Each initiative was thoughtfully designed, impactful, and impossible to object to without appearing callous. When she finished, Oliver spoke. While I appreciate the enthusiasm, I suggest we take a more measured approach. Perhaps focus on 1 or 2 initiatives initially. The funding is already secured, Isabella replied smoothly. As per the trust document, James Enterprises' first quarterly contribution has been received. We have the resources to proceed with all proposed initiatives. Oliver's jaw tightened. As the trust's co-founder, Isabella corrected gently. The document recognizes both of us in that capacity. A board member one Oliver hadn't selected spoke up. These initiatives align perfectly with the trust's stated purpose. I move we approve the full proposal. The motion passed easily, with only Oliver's 2 appointees dissenting. As the meeting concluded, Oliver pulled Isabella aside. Impressive performance, he said quietly. But this isn't over. It was never about winning, Oliver, she replied. It was about doing something meaningful with the power you taught me to use. The trust's activities quickly gained attention. Local news covered the scholarship recipients. Business publications praised the innovative approach to community investment. Social media buzzed with positive stories about the James Community Trust. For Oliver, the consequences extended beyond the financial commitment. At James Enterprises' quarterly shareholders meeting, questions arose. Mr. James, one major investor began, your company has committed significant funds to this new trust. Can you explain how this aligns with maximizing shareholder value? Oliver delivered a practiced response about corporate social responsibility and long-term brand building. Another shareholder pressed further. The trust's funding structure scales with company growth. Doesn't this create a conflict of interest for management? The questions continued, growing more pointed. By meeting's end, James Enterprises' stock had dropped 3%. Oliver's CFO approached him afterward, concern evident. The market's reacting to the trust commitment. It's seen as an unpredictable liability. It's temporary, Oliver insisted. A blip, but it wasn't. As the trust's activities expanded, so did its public profile. Isabella gave interviews discussing its mission, always careful to credit the James family's commitment to ethical business practices. Each mention linked Oliver's name to obligations he hadn't freely chosen. The financial impact grew. James Enterprises' aggressive growth strategy relied on reinvesting profits. With millions now diverted to the trust annually, projections had to be revised downward. Shareholders grew restless. Board members asked uncomfortable questions. Oliver's attempts to limit the damage backfired. When he publicly suggested scaling back certain trust initiatives, he faced immediate backlash. James retreating from community commitments? Read one damaging headline. In private, he explored every legal avenue to modify the trust's terms. Each consultation ended the same way. The structure was ironclad. She designed it perfectly, his newest lawyer admitted. The more you fight it, the worse you look. 6 months after signing, Oliver faced a hostile board meeting at James Enterprises. The company's stock had underperformed expectations for 2 consecutive quarters. The trust is a distraction, argued one board member. It's affecting your focus and our bottom line. It's a temporary adjustment, Oliver insisted. Is it? Challenged another. Or is it evidence of questionable judgment? The implication was clear. Oliver's decision to sign the trust document without fully understanding its implications raised doubts about his leadership. That evening, alone in his penthouse, Oliver poured himself a scotch and confronted an uncomfortable truth. Isabella hadn't just created a financial obligation. She'd created a test of character he was failing. Every attempt to undermine the trust made him appear petty and unethical. Every public complaint contradicted his own statements about corporate responsibility. Every legal maneuver reinforced the perception that his commitment had been insincere. His phone buzzed with a news alert. James Community Trust expands programs, receives additional $5 million in public donations. The trust was growing beyond his contributions. People were voluntarily adding to its resources, expanding its reach while still carrying his family name. Oliver set down his glass, a realization dawning. Isabella hadn't designed the trust merely as revenge. She'd created something genuinely valuable, something that could enhance rather than damage his legacy. If only he could see beyond his wounded pride. The question was whether he was capable of such vision. The James Community Trust's headquarters occupied a modest office in a renovated building downtown. Isabella had deliberately chosen the location, accessible to the communities they served, fiscally responsible, yet professional enough to host potential donors and partners. "Ms. Brown, your 10 o'clock is here," her assistant announced. Isabella looked up from her computer. "Send her in, please." A young woman entered, clutching a portfolio. "Ms. Brown? I'm Zoe Washington. Thank you for meeting with me. Please sit." Isabella gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I was impressed by your application." Zoe was the trust's newest scholarship recipient, brilliant, determined, and from a neighborhood where financial careers were rarely considered accessible. "The scholarship means everything to me," Zoe said earnestly. "But I was hoping. That is, I wondered if the mentorship component might be possible." Isabella smiled. "That's exactly why I wanted to meet you personally. Mentorship isn't just possible, it's essential." For the next hour, they discussed Zoe's aspirations, challenges, and path forward. Isabella shared insights from her own journey, including the obstacles she'd faced as a woman of color in finance. "People will underestimate you," she told Zoe. "Use that. Let them reveal their limitations while you focus on your strengths." As Zoe left, visibly energized, Isabella's assistant appeared with a stack of messages. The Harvard Business School panel confirmed for next month. The Financial Times wants an interview about ethical investment strategies. And Ms. Westridge called again about joining their board. Isabella nodded, scanning the messages. "Schedule the Harvard panel. Tell the Times I'm available next week. And set up lunch with Ms. Westridge." In the 18 months since establishing the trust, Isabella's professional stature had transformed. Her firm, Brown Strategic Consulting, had tripled in size. Her client list included companies committed to ethical business practices. Her speaking engagements commanded premium fees. More importantly, she had found her voice not as Oliver James's partner or protege, but as a thought leader in her own right. That afternoon, she led a strategy session with her team, reviewing proposals for expanding their services. "The demand for ESG consulting has exploded," her operations director noted. "We're turning away clients." "Then we need to grow thoughtfully," Isabella replied. "Quality over quantity. Our reputation is built on integrity." The word hung in the air, a reminder of the principles that had guided her through the darkest period of her professional life. Later, as she reviewed the trust's quarterly report, her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Have you seen this?" Attached was a business news link. "James Enterprises faces shareholder revolt. CEO's leadership questioned." Isabella set down her phone without opening the article. Oliver's struggles weren't her concern anymore. She had built something meaningful from the ashes of their relationship, both professionally and through the trust. The trust itself had exceeded all expectations. Its programs now operated in 7 cities. Its scholarship recipients were thriving. Its business ethics curriculum had been adopted by 3 universities. And Isabella had discovered something unexpected in leading it, a sense of purpose beyond personal success. The trust wasn't just about proving a point to Oliver. It had become about creating genuine impact. That evening, she attended a women's leadership gala where she was being honored. As she took the stage to accept her award, she scanned the audience, successful women from across industries, many of whom she now counted as allies and friends. "Thank you for this honor," she began. My journey hasn't been straightforward. There were moments when I questioned everything: my judgment, my worth, my place in an industry that wasn't designed for people who look like me. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What I've learned is that our greatest power often emerges from our most painful challenges. When someone tries to diminish you, they sometimes inadvertently show you exactly how powerful you can be. The audience applauded, many nodding in recognition. I stand here not despite the obstacles I've faced, but because of how they forced me to grow. To all the women fighting to be seen and heard in rooms where decisions are made, keep going. Your voice matters. Your perspective is essential. And your resilience is your superpower. As applause filled the room, Isabella caught sight of a familiar face near the back. Westridge Capital CEO, watching with evident approval. Their lunch meeting the following week would lead to an offer to join their board of directors, further cementing Isabella's position as a respected voice in financial ethics. Back in her apartment that night, a new one, in a building she had chosen for herself, Isabella reflected on how far she had come. The wall of her home office displayed framed articles about the trust's impact, alongside photos of scholarship recipients and community projects. Notably absent were any photos of Oliver. She had moved forward professionally and personally. She dated occasionally, though cautiously. She had rebuilt her financial security entirely on her own terms. Most importantly, she had reclaimed her sense of self-worth. Her phone rang. Julie, her former assistant who now served as the trust's program director. Sorry to call so late, Julie began, but I thought you should know. James Enterprises announced major leadership changes today. Oliver James is stepping down as CEO. Isabella absorbed the news silently. They're citing strategic differences with the board, Julie continued. But rumor has it the shareholders lost confidence after the latest quarter's results. Thank you for letting me know, Isabella said evenly. After hanging up, she sat in the quiet of her apartment, surprised by her own reaction. Not satisfaction or vindication, but a complex mixture of emotions she hadn't expected. Oliver had taught her painful but valuable lessons about power, self-reliance, and the importance of controlling her own destiny. In a strange way, she had him to thank for who she had become. The next morning, Isabella arrived at the trust offices early. On her desk was the latest impact report, statistics on scholarships awarded, businesses supported, communities transformed. This was her legacy now, one that would outlast any personal history. As she reviewed the document, her assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Brown, there's a package for you. The courier envelope bore no return address. Inside was a newspaper clipping of Oliver's resignation announcement, and a handwritten note on James Enterprises stationery. You built something meaningful. I'm still learning how. Oh. Isabella placed the note in her desk drawer without responding. Her rise wasn't about Oliver's fall. It was about her own strength, finally recognized by others, and more importantly by herself. The James Enterprises boardroom had once been Oliver's domain, a place where his word was final, his vision unquestioned. Now, as he faced the grim-faced board members, he felt like a visitor in his own company. The numbers speak for themselves, said Richard Harmon, the board chairman. 3 consecutive quarters of underperformance. Market share declining in key sectors. Investor confidence at a 5-year low. Oliver leaned forward. Every company faces downturns. Our fundamentals remain strong. This isn't just a downturn, countered another board member. It's a pattern of questionable decisions. Such as, Oliver challenged, the Westridge acquisition attempt, overvalued and ultimately rejected. The Asian market expansion, poorly timed and over budget. And of course, Richard paused meaningfully, the James Community Trust commitment, which continues to divert significant capital with no clear return on investment. Oliver's jaw tightened. The trust enhances our corporate social responsibility profile. A profile that's increasingly at odds with shareholder interests, Richard replied. Which brings us to the real issue, Oliver. Your leadership. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The board has lost confidence in your decision-making, Richard continued. We're requesting your voluntary resignation as CEO. Oliver stared in disbelief. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. If you refuse, we'll call for a formal vote of no confidence. Given the proxy statements we've already received, you would lose. I built this company, Oliver said, his voice dangerously quiet. From nothing. And we're grateful for that legacy, Richard said, his tone softening slightly. Which is why we're offering you the chance to step down gracefully. Remain as chairman emeritus. Protect your reputation and the James name. The James name, once his greatest pride, now attached to obligations he couldn't escape and a company slipping from his grasp. I need time to consider, Oliver said finally. You have until tomorrow morning, Richard replied. After that, we go public with our concerns. Oliver left the meeting in a daze, ignoring his assistant's questions as he strode to his office. He closed the door, loosened his tie, and poured himself a drink from the cabinet he kept for celebrating victories. How had it come to this? The easy answer was Isabella and the trust. But the truth was more complex and far more painful. The trust had been a catalyst, not the cause. His reaction to it, the obsessive attempts to undermine it, the distraction from core business, the public relations missteps, those were his doing. His phone buzzed with a text from his PR director. Wall Street Journal requesting comment on board meeting. Rumors circulating. Oliver ignored it, moving to the window that overlooked the city. His city, he had always thought. From this height, people looked tiny, insignificant. That perspective had shaped his leadership, seeing numbers instead of lives, assets instead of aspirations. Isabella had seen differently. She had created a trust that recognized the humanity in business. And ironically, it bore his name, ensuring that the James legacy would be defined by her vision, not his. His phone buzzed again. His lawyer this time. Latest trust report published. Programs expanding to 3 new cities. Significant positive press. Oliver opened his laptop and found the report. Page after page of measurable impact. Scholarships awarded, businesses launched, communities strengthened. All under the James name. All directed by Isabella's steady hand. The contrast with his own company's report was stark. James Enterprises had focused on short-term gains, aggressive acquisitions, and market dominance. Under his leadership, they had prioritized power over purpose. And now, the board had found him wanting. That night, alone in his penthouse, Oliver faced the hardest decision of his career. Fight the board and likely lose in a humiliating public battle? Or step down voluntarily, preserving what remained of his reputation? The next morning, he arrived at the office earlier than usual. The building was quiet, most employees not yet arrived. He walked the halls slowly, seeing the company through new eyes, the culture he had created, the values he had emphasized, the legacy he would leave. When the board convened at 9 a.m., Oliver was ready. I've made my decision, he announced. I will step down as CEO, effective immediately. Relief visibly swept through the room. However, Oliver continued, I have conditions. Richard frowned. This isn't a negotiation, Oliver. Actually, it is. I still own 27% of this company. I can make your transition very difficult, or I can make it seamless. Your choice. The board members exchanged glances. What conditions? Richard asked cautiously. First, I retain my seat on the board. Second, my departure is announced as a personal decision to pursue philanthropic interests. And third, Oliver paused. James Enterprises increases its commitment to the James Community Trust by an additional 1% of annual profits. Stunned silence followed. Why would you want that? Richard finally asked. The trust is already a significant financial obligation. Oliver met his gaze steadily. Because it may be the only worthwhile thing I've put my name on. The terms were accepted. By afternoon, the press release was drafted. Oliver James steps down to focus on philanthropic endeavors. The financial media speculated wildly. Some praised his visionary shift toward social impact. Others questioned the timing amid declining performance. The stock dropped initially, then stabilized as the new CEO was announced. Oliver watched it all from the sidelines, experiencing for the first time in decades what it meant to be powerless. No executive team awaiting his decisions. No board deferring to his vision. No Isabella believing in his potential. The days stretched emptily before him. He traveled briefly, finding no satisfaction in luxury resorts or exclusive clubs. He considered starting a new company, but his heart wasn't in it. He even dated casually, each relationship shallow and brief. Nothing filled the void left by his twin losses, his company and Isabella. 3 months after stepping down, Oliver attended a financial conference, his first public appearance since the resignation. He sat in the audience rather than on stage, listening as industry leaders discussed market trends. Then Isabella was introduced as the keynote speaker. Oliver sat straighter, watching as she took the stage with quiet confidence. Her presentation on ethical investment strategies was brilliant, insightful, commanding. The audience, his peers, listened with rapt attention. Afterward, as attendees networked, Oliver found himself alone at the bar. From across the room, he saw Isabella surrounded by admirers, CEOs, investors, thought leaders. She had become what he had once been, influential, respected, sought after. But there was a crucial difference. Her influence wasn't built on intimidation or wealth. It was built on integrity. As he watched her, a realization dawned that shook him to his core. He had lost everything that mattered, but she had gained something he had never possessed, purpose beyond power. Oliver left the conference without approaching her. Back in his now quiet life, he began reading everything Isabella had published. He studied the trust's programs. He followed the careers of its scholarship recipients. Slowly, painfully, he began to understand what she had created, not just a legal mechanism to teach him a lesson, but a vehicle for genuine change. His downfall, he realized, wasn't losing his company. It was losing sight of why he had built it in the first place. The annual James Community Trust Gala filled the Botanical Garden with light and conversation. Donors, program recipients, community leaders, and board members mingled among flowering exhibits, celebrating another year of impact. Isabella moved through the crowd gracefully, thanking supporters and introducing scholarship students to potential mentors. Her simple black dress and minimal jewelry reflected her leadership style, elegant but understated, focused on substance over show. "Ms. Brown," called a board member, "the program begins in 15 minutes." Isabella nodded, making her way toward the stage area to review her remarks. As executive director, she would highlight the trust's achievements and recognize key contributors. She was checking the microphone when her assistant approached, looking concerned. "Isabella, he's here." "Who's here?" "Oliver James." Isabella stilled. "He wasn't invited. He's on the guest list as a major donor. His contribution came in last week. $2 million, personal funds, not from the company." Isabella took a measured breath. "Where is he now?" "Near the entrance." "Should I have security escort him out?" After a moment's consideration, Isabella shook her head. "No, it's a public event and he is a donor. Just make sure he's seated away from the main table." As guests took their seats, Isabella scanned the room, finally spotting Oliver near the back. He looked different, thinner, less commanding, dressed well but without his usual ostentation. Their eyes met briefly before she turned her attention to the program. The evening proceeded as planned. Scholarship recipients shared their stories. Community partners presented project updates. Board members recognized major supporters. When it was Isabella's turn to speak, she approached the podium with the confidence of someone who knew her worth. "The James Community Trust began with a simple premise," she said, "that business success and community well-being are not opposing forces, but complementary strengths. That ethical practices create sustainable prosperity. That investing in people yields returns no balance sheet can fully capture." From the back of the room, Oliver watched. hearing not just her words but the vision behind them, a vision clearer and more compelling than any he had articulated as CEO. Tonight, we celebrate not just what we've accomplished, but what's possible when we align power with purpose, Isabella continued. When we measure success not by what we accumulate, but by what we contribute. The applause was warm and genuine. As Isabella concluded her remarks, the event chair approached the microphone. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for your inspiring leadership. Before we close, we have an unexpected addition to our program. Mr. Oliver James, the Trust's namesake, has asked to say a few words. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Isabella's expression remained neutral, though her pulse quickened. Oliver made his way to the stage, nodding respectfully to Isabella as they passed. At the podium, he surveyed the room, faces curious, some wary, all attentive. Thank you for allowing me to speak, he began, his voice less commanding than Isabella remembered. I hadn't planned to attend tonight, much less address you, but seeing the Trust's impact firsthand, I felt compelled to acknowledge something important. He paused, gathering himself. The James Community Trust bears my family name, but its heart and vision belong to Isabella Brown. The room fell silent. 2 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I used financial power to control someone I claimed to care about. I closed an account, believing I was asserting authority. What I was really doing was revealing my own weakness, my fear of being equaled, of being challenged, of being truly seen. Isabella sat perfectly still, her face unreadable. Ms. Brown responded not with vengeance, but with vision. She created this trust, yes, with terms I didn't fully understand when I signed. A small, self-deprecating smile crossed his face. But with a purpose I couldn't have imagined. While I was focused on power, she was focused on impact. Oliver turned slightly toward Isabella. I've spent the past year watching what you've built. The scholarships, the community investments, the ethics curriculum now taught in universities across the country. And I've realized something profound. This trust isn't my burden. It's my redemption. He faced the audience again. The James name has been in business for 3 generations. It has been associated with wealth, with influence, with power. Thanks to Isabella Brown, it will now be associated with something far more valuable. Purpose. Oliver's voice softened. I came here tonight to say publicly what I should have said long ago. I was wrong. My cruelty became the catalyst for something extraordinary. The trust Ms. Brown designed is the best mistake I ever made, a mistake that has taught me more about leadership, legacy, and genuine success than all my years as CEO. He stepped back from the podium. Thank you for allowing me to witness what happens when power is placed in more worthy hands. The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, applause began, tentative at first, then building. Not for his wealth or position, but for his honesty. As Oliver returned to his seat, eyes followed him, some skeptical, others moved by his vulnerability. Isabella remained composed, though those who knew her well could see the slight tremor in her hands as she took a sip of water. The program concluded shortly after. As guests mingled over dessert, Oliver kept his distance, speaking quietly with a few board members but making no attempt to approach Isabella. It was she who finally crossed the room to where he stood alone, watching scholarship recipients laughing with donors. That was unexpected, she said simply. Oliver turned to her. It was overdue. Why now? Because I finally understood what you created, he replied. Not a trap, but an opportunity. One I was too blind to see. Isabella studied him, looking for the manipulation she had grown to expect. Instead, she found something unfamiliar in his eyes: humility. The trust is doing important work, she acknowledged. Because of your leadership, Oliver said. Not my name. A brief silence fell between them. I should return to my guests, Isabella said finally. Oliver nodded. Of course. Thank you for not having me removed. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. The trust welcomes all sincere supporters. As she turned to leave, Oliver spoke again. Isabella, I'd like to talk. When you're ready. if you're ever ready. She paused, not turning back. I'll consider it. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something neither had expected, the possibility of a conversation not defined by power or pain, but by mutual respect. As Isabella rejoined the gala, greeting donors and trust beneficiaries, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had not just survived betrayal, but transformed it into purpose. And from across the room, Oliver watched, finally understanding what he had lost and what he might, with time and genuine change, hope to regain. Not control, not ownership, but the privilege of contributing to something truly meaningful. The morning after the gala, Isabella sat in her office, staring at the newspaper headline, "James makes public apology at Trust Gala. Former CEO acknowledges terrible mistake." The article quoted his speech extensively, analyzing the remarkable public admission from a man once known for his unyielding confidence. Financial analysts speculated about his future plans. Social media buzzed with reactions ranging from cynicism to admiration. Isabella set the paper aside, her emotions still unsettled. Oliver's apology had been unexpected, public, and by all appearances sincere. He had acknowledged not just his actions but their underlying motivation, his fear of being equaled, his need for control. Her phone had been buzzing since dawn, board members, colleagues, friends, all wanting her reaction. She had responded with brief, non-committal messages. The truth was, she didn't know how to feel. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Julie entered, carrying coffee. "Thought you might need this. It's been quite a morning." "Thank you," Isabella said, accepting the cup gratefully. Julie hesitated. The board chair called. "They're impressed with how you handled last night. Apparently, donations have increased significantly since Oliver's speech." Isabella nodded absently. "Are you okay?" Julie asked gently. "I'm processing," Isabella admitted. "For 2 years, I've defined myself partly in opposition to what Oliver represented. His apology was," she searched for the right word, "disorienting." "Do you think he meant it?" Isabella considered the question carefully. "Yes," she said finally. "I do. Which is what makes it complicated." After Julie left, Isabella opened her laptop and pulled up the Trust's latest impact report. Pages of data showed lives changed, opportunities created, communities strengthened. This was real, tangible impact, regardless of Oliver's recent epiphany. Her work phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Isabella Brown speaking. Ms. Brown, this is Margaret Westridge, the CEO of Westridge Capital, one of the firms Oliver had tried to prevent Isabella from working with years ago. I was at the gala last night. Quite a moment." "Indeed," Isabella replied neutrally. "I've been following your work with the Trust. It's impressive, but I'm calling about something else. Our board position. I know you've been considering it. After last night, I wanted to confirm our offer remains open." The irony wasn't lost on Isabella. The very connection Oliver had once tried to prevent was now being reaffirmed because of his public acknowledgement. "Thank you, Ms. Westridge. I'm still considering it." "Take your time," Margaret said. "Though I should mention, Oliver James called me this morning." Isabella tensed. "Oh, he recommended you for the position. Said you were the most ethically grounded financial mind in the industry." His words. After ending the call, Isabella sat in stunned silence. Oliver wasn't just apologizing. He was actively trying to right his wrongs. That evening, in the quiet of her apartment, Isabella finally allowed herself to fully feel the emotions she'd been managing all day. Relief that her judgment had been publicly vindicated. Satisfaction that the Trust's work was being recognized. Pride in what she had built from pain. And beneath it all, a surprising flicker of something she hadn't expected, not forgiveness. Exactly, but a willingness to consider that people, even those who had hurt her deeply, could change. Her personal phone chimed with a text message. "Oliver, no pressure, no expectations. Just wanted to say again, you've built something remarkable. Isabella stared at the message for a long time before setting her phone aside without responding. She wasn't ready for direct communication. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. But for the first time since their relationship imploded, she allowed herself to remember not just the betrayal, but the man she had once believed in, the one who had recognized her talent before anyone else, who had challenged her thinking, who had shown glimpses of the person he might have become if fear hadn't consumed him. The question now was whether his apology represented a momentary impulse or a genuine transformation. Only time would tell. And Isabella had learned the value of patience. 3 weeks after the gala, Isabella agreed to meet Oliver. Not at his penthouse or her office, but on neutral ground, a quiet corner table at the Botanical Garden Cafe where they had once spent Sunday mornings discussing books and ideas. She arrived precisely on time, dressed in a simple blue dress that projected calm confidence. Oliver was already there, standing when he saw her approach. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice carefully controlled. Isabella nodded, taking the seat across from him. "Your apology at the gala was unexpected, but necessary," Oliver replied. "Long overdue." A server approached. They ordered herbal tea for her, black coffee for him. The familiar ritual highlighted how much had changed between them. When they were alone again, Oliver spoke first. "I've been following the Trust's work. The scholarship program is particularly impressive." "It's making a difference," Isabella acknowledged. "We're seeing recipients return to their communities, starting businesses, creating opportunities for others. Because you designed it that way," Oliver said. "With foresight I never possessed." Isabella studied him. The Oliver she had known would have used this meeting to negotiate, to seek advantage, to reassert control. This man seemed different, humbled, yes, but also more present, more attentive. "Why did you call Margaret Westridge?" she asked directly. Oliver didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Because I once tried to limit your opportunities. I wanted to do the opposite now. I don't need your help." "I know," he said simply. "That's why I didn't tell you." It wasn't about credit. It was about trying to balance the scales, however inadequately. Their drinks arrived. Isabella wrapped her hands around the warm mug, gathering her thoughts. "I didn't agree to this meeting to discuss the past," she said finally. "What happened, happened. We can't change it." "No," Oliver agreed. "We can't. But I can acknowledge it honestly. I was threatened by your success, by your independence. I used money as a weapon because I was afraid of losing control. And now?" Isabella asked. "Now I understand what I lost wasn't control. It was connection, trust, possibility." He paused. "I lost you." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. "Yes," Isabella said quietly. "You did." Oliver nodded, accepting the finality in her tone. "I don't expect forgiveness, Isabella. I don't even expect friendship. I asked for this meeting because I wanted to tell you directly, not just publicly, that I recognize the harm I caused. And that I see clearly now what you've built, something far more valuable than what I destroyed." Isabella felt the sincerity in his words. It didn't erase the past, but it acknowledged it honestly. "The Trust has a new initiative," she said, changing the subject slightly. "We're developing a financial literacy program for high school students, teaching them not just about money management, but about ethical decision-making." "That's important work," Oliver said, following her lead. "Something I wish I'd learned earlier. We're looking for guest speakers, people with real-world experience, both positive and negative." Oliver looked surprised. "Are you asking?" "I'm suggesting," Isabella clarified. "Your perspective could be valuable, not as the former CEO of James Enterprises, but as someone who has learned difficult lessons about power and its misuse." It was an olive branch, not personal reconciliation, but professional acknowledgement. "I'd be honored," Oliver said quietly, "on whatever terms you set." They spoke for another hour about the Trust, about business ethics, about the changes in their respective lives. The conversation was careful but genuine. two people finding a new way to interact without the dynamics that had once defined them. As they prepared to leave, Oliver asked the question that had been unspoken throughout their meeting. Is there any path forward, Isabella? Not back to what we were, but to something new, something better. Isabella considered her answer carefully. I don't know, she said honestly. What I do know is that trust, once broken, can't be repaired quickly or easily. It requires consistent action over time. Words matter. Your apology mattered. But it's what comes next that will determine whether there's any path forward. Oliver nodded, accepting her terms. Then I'll focus on actions, not expectations. As they walked toward the garden exit, Isabella stopped by a bench where they had once sat planning a future together. I need to be clear about something, she said. I've built a life I'm proud of. I won't compromise my independence or my principles, not for you, not for anyone. I wouldn't want you to, Oliver replied. The woman who compromised wouldn't be the woman He caught himself. Wouldn't be you. Isabella heard the word he hadn't spoken, love. It hung in the air between them, complicated by history but not entirely extinguished. Goodbye, Oliver, she said, extending her hand formally. He took it, his touch light and respectful. Until the next board meeting. It wasn't a promise of reconciliation. It wasn't even a promise of friendship. But it was an acknowledgement that their story wasn't entirely finished, that the trust bearing his name and guided by her vision might yet write new chapters neither of them had anticipated. 6 months later, the James Community Trust held its quarterly board meeting in a sunlit conference room overlooking the city. Board members reviewed program updates, financial reports, and strategic plans with evident satisfaction. The ethics curriculum has been adopted by 12 more universities, reported the education director. Feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. And the scholarship program? Asked a board member. 37 new recipients this quarter, Isabella replied. Each one mentored by industry professionals. Oliver, seated near the middle of the table rather than at its head, listened attentively. In the months since their private meeting, he had kept his word, focusing on actions rather than expectations. He attended every board meeting. He contributed thoughtfully but never dominated. He volunteered regularly with the trust's programs, working directly with scholarship recipients and community partners. Most significantly, he had established a personal foundation separate from the trust, focused on business ethics education. Its first initiative funding research on power dynamics in corporate structures and their impact on decision-making. As the meeting concluded, Isabella addressed the board. Before we adjourn, I'd like to propose a structural change. As you know, my term as executive director ends in 6 months. While I remain committed to the trust's mission, I believe it's time to consider new leadership that can take our work to the next level. Murmurs of surprise filled the room. Are you stepping down entirely? Asked a concerned board member. Not stepping down, Isabella clarified. Stepping aside as executive director while remaining on the board. This organization should not be defined by any single person, including me. Oliver watched her, understanding the significance of her decision. She was ensuring the trust would outlast both of them, becoming truly independent of its founders. After the meeting, as board members gathered their materials, Oliver approached Isabella. That was unexpected, he said quietly. It's the right decision, she replied. The trust needs to evolve beyond us. Oliver nodded. You're ensuring its independence, its integrity. Yes. They walked together toward the elevator, a comfortable silence between them that would have been unimaginable months earlier. I've been thinking about what you said, Oliver said as they waited, about trust requiring consistent action over time. And I realize now that's true not just between people, but between institutions and communities, between businesses and the public they serve. Isabella glanced at him, surprised by the insight. The trust you designed, Oliver continued, it's not just about funding programs. It's about keeping promises, about being accountable. That was always the intention, Isabella acknowledged. The elevator arrived. As they stepped inside, Oliver asked, "Would you have dinner with me tonight?" To discuss the transition planning. Isabella considered the request. 6 months ago, she would have refused immediately. Now she found herself nodding. Dinner would be fine. Professional dinner, she clarified. Of course, Oliver agreed. I'll have my assistant make a reservation. Somewhere public, professional. As they reached the lobby, Isabella turned to him. You've changed, Oliver. I'm trying to, he replied honestly. I had an excellent teacher, though her methods were unconventional. A small smile touched Isabella's lips. Creating an irrevocable trust with your name on it? Exactly, Oliver said, returning her smile. Most effective lesson I've ever received. That evening, over dinner at a quiet restaurant, they discussed the trust's future. Their conversation was primarily professional, focused on transition planning and leadership succession. But occasionally, glimpses of their former connection emerged. A shared perspective, a moment of unexpected laughter, a look of mutual understanding. I've accepted the Westridge board position, Isabella mentioned as they finished their meal. Congratulations, Oliver said sincerely. They're fortunate to have you. It's a good fit. Their commitment to ethical investing aligns with my values. Oliver nodded. Values I should have respected from the beginning. Yes, Isabella agreed simply. You should have. Her directness was refreshing, no pretense, no games, just honest communication. Isabella, Oliver said carefully, I know our history can't be erased. I know trust rebuilds slowly, if at all. But I want you to know, I'm committed to earning back your respect. Not your forgiveness, not your affection. Just your respect. Isabella studied him, seeing the genuine change in the man who had once wielded power so carelessly. You're already earning it, she said quietly. One day, one action at a time. As they parted that evening, Oliver didn't press for more. He didn't suggest another dinner or make personal overtures. Instead, he simply thanked her for her time and insights. I'll see you at the scholarship ceremony next week, he said. I'll be there, Isabella replied. They had found a new equilibrium, not the passionate connection they once shared, but something potentially more enduring. Mutual respect built on genuine growth. The moral reversal was complete. The man who had once closed her account to control her now supported her independence. The woman who had created a trust to teach him a lesson now acknowledged his capacity for change. Neither knew what the future might hold, but both understood that whatever came next would be built on a foundation of equality, transparency, and earned trust, the very principles the James Community Trust had been created to promote. 5 years after the creation of the James Community Trust, its headquarters had expanded to occupy an entire floor of a renovated historic building downtown. The walls displayed photographs of scholarship recipients, community projects, and educational initiatives, a visual testament to its growing impact. Isabella, now serving as board chair rather than executive director, walked through the space with quiet pride. Under new leadership, the trust had flourished, its programs reaching communities across the country. Its ethical business curriculum was taught in universities nationwide. Its scholarship recipients were becoming leaders in their own right. Ms. Brown, called a young woman approaching from the conference room. The documentary crew is ready for your interview. Isabella nodded. A major streaming service was producing a documentary on ethical business practices, featuring the trust as a case study in institutional change. As she settled into the interview chair, the director asked, Can you tell us how the James Community Trust began? Isabella smiled. It began with a closed account and an open possibility, with the recognition that power, when redirected toward purpose, can transform not just institutions but people. Across town, in a modest office bearing the name James Foundation for Ethical Leadership, Oliver reviewed applications for the Foundation's annual fellowship program. The Foundation, separate from both James Enterprises and the Community Trust, represented his personal commitment to promoting ethical business practices. His phone buzzed with a message from Isabella. Documentary interview complete. They want to speak with you next week. Oliver replied, whatever serves the trust's mission. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could have predicted, not a return to romance, but a partnership built on shared purpose and hard-earned respect. They collaborated professionally, occasionally shared meals, and maintained clear boundaries. Oliver had never returned to corporate leadership. Instead, he taught business ethics at a local university, sharing with students the costly lessons he had learned about power and its responsible use. Isabella had become a recognized authority on ethical investment strategies, her firm thriving, her board positions influential. She dated occasionally but remained focused primarily on her work and the communities she served. That evening, they met at the Botanical Garden, now a tradition for their quarterly personal check-ins, separate from trust business. The scholarship ceremony last week was remarkable, Oliver said as they walked familiar paths. Seeing those students, knowing what they'll accomplish, that's the true legacy, Isabella agreed. Not buildings or balance sheets, but lives changed. They stopped by a flowering magnolia tree, its blossoms filling the air with sweet fragrance. Do you ever think about how this all began? Oliver asked. With my worst mistake? I think about how it evolved, Isabella corrected gently. From reaction to creation, from hurt to healing. Oliver nodded, understanding the distinction. The trust became something neither of us could have built alone. That's the irony, Isabella said with a small smile. It took both of us, your name and resources, my vision and determination. Even our conflict served a purpose. They continued walking, comfortable in the rhythm they had established over time. The board is considering expanding the trust's focus, Isabella mentioned, adding environmental sustainability to our core mission. That makes sense, Oliver replied. Ethics, community, environment, they're interconnected. 5 years ago, he might have questioned such an expansion, seeing only costs rather than possibilities. Now he understood what Isabella had always seen, that true value extended beyond balance sheets. As sunset painted the garden in golden light, they found themselves at the bench where, years earlier, Isabella had set clear boundaries for any path forward. I'm proud of what we've built, Oliver said quietly. Not just the trust, but this. He gestured between them. This understanding. Isabella nodded. It wasn't the path either of us expected. But perhaps the one we needed, Oliver suggested. Their eyes met, acknowledging the journey that had brought them here, from power struggle to partnership, from betrayal to a carefully rebuilt trust. The documentary producers asked me if I regret what happened, Isabella said. The account closure, the trust creation, all of it. And what did you tell them? Oliver asked. That regret is less useful than growth. That sometimes our most painful experiences lead to our most meaningful contributions. Oliver considered her words. Wise answer. I've had good teachers, Isabella replied, including failure, loss, and unexpected redemption. As they prepared to leave the garden, Oliver asked the question that had remained unspoken in recent months. Isabella, are we friends now? She considered the question carefully. I think we're something more complex than friends. We're co-creators of something meaningful. We're witnesses to each other's growth. She searched for the right word. We're connected in a way that defies simple categories. It wasn't a declaration of renewed romantic feelings. It wasn't a promise of a shared future beyond their work. But it was an acknowledgement that their story continued to unfold in ways neither could have anticipated when she walked out of his office 5 years earlier. I can accept that, Oliver said, respecting the nuance in her answer. As they parted ways at the garden entrance, no dramatic gestures marked the moment. Just the quiet understanding of two people who had traveled from adversaries to allies, from power imbalance to mutual respect. The James Community Trust would continue its work, outlasting both its founders, creating ripples of impact neither could fully measure. The trust bearing his name but shaped by her vision had become a legacy greater than either might have built alone. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all, that sometimes our most profound contributions emerge not from our moments of strength and certainty, but from our vulnerability, our mistakes, and our willingness to grow beyond them. If this story touched you, please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful narratives from Mr. Ellington LoveLines.